So today we're going to be talking about communication. We have seen so often that that is what people are struggling the most with. When you look into it online, the vast majority of married couples are struggling with how to properly communicate with each other, whether they're worried about it turning into a complete disaster if they bring something up. There's a lot of actually good intentions built into how they want to communicate, but more often than not, they're struggling and don't have any idea what to do. I think it's going to vary from every single couple because the way people talk to each other is going to be very different dependent on your personalities, just who you are, how you've learned to be with each other. But there are overall principles that can really help you that the Bible has already laid out for you. I always try and keep Ephesians chapter 5 in my mind, and I'm sure you've probably heard it all before, but I take it very seriously when I'm told to love my wife as Christ loved the church. Who Jesus was when he was here on earth and how he led the apostles and how he went about doing things and how he taught them to do things. Now, Jesus could definitely just tell people what to do, and he expected people to listen when he did, but he taught them, if you're going to be the leader, then you should live as a servant. You should consider yourself the servant of the people that you are in charge of. And that's really important when I take into account loving my wife as Christ loved the church, because I've been put in this position where I am the head of my household because I'm the man. And that leads into what the Bible says for women, in that they are supposed to submit to their husbands. Now, that might sound really hard for a lot of women to do, but it's not when you consider how the man is actually supposed to be living his life and what he's supposed to be doing. You're probably wondering, how in the world is this, what does this have to do with communication? Whenever I go into any kind of a discussion with Hannah, I'm always keeping in mind that it is my priority to love her the way Christ would love her. That means I'm going to put her before myself. It means that I'm going to prioritize her safety, her desires to the best of my abilities, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we are on a path that is holy and makes sense biblically. When you do that, when you go into this conversation with that in mind, not thinking about how this is going to benefit you, but how you can do everything you can for her, it really changes the entire framework of how a discussion's going to go. It doesn't mean that you have to be a pushover. There are going to be some things that you have to stand your ground on. When we were talking about this beforehand, something that came up is open marriages and other more like way out there kinds of things that your wife might for some reason bring up. Very unlikely, but obviously in those cases you have to stand your ground. You can't just lead her into sin or let her decide she wants to sin and, well, you just gotta make her happy, so just go with it. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But she is your priority, and so when you go into any conversation, it is always good to have her as your priority. And vice versa, when you keep in mind as a woman that you're supposed to submit unto your husband and really follow his lead, you bring everything you can to him and you figure it out together and you submit to whatever decision he ends up making, knowing that he has your best interests in mind even more so than his own. And I found overall that when I go into conversations with this mindset, that it just makes talking easier. Like, we don't have a lot of arguments. We don't deal with a lot of fights because I just already want to do what's best for Hannah, and so I'm just going to do my best to make it happen so long as it's within my power. It's not a stress to me. I genuinely want her to be happy no matter what. When you take yourself out as the priority and you start making the other person the priority, conversation, communication becomes easier. There's a lot less anger. There's a lot less sadness. There's a lot less in the way of problems. Things tend to just work out better. There's still going to be arguments. There's still going to be harder times, and there's ways of getting through those as well. Making sure that you're very peaceful. You don't treat it as though the other person is suddenly like the worst person in the world because they're not agreeing with you right now on this, whatever this serious issue is. It's not always perfect. So the husband is not always going to be a perfect man who gets everything right, and so it's not always the best idea to submit to whatever he's saying, because just in the same way it's a bad idea to just let your wife do whatever she wants, even to the point of sin, it's also a bad idea to submit to a husband to the point where you're just allowing sin into the door. I find that when you keep these things in mind, these two factors, communication just becomes a lot easier, and most of the fights will just kind of go away. There won't really be anything left to fight about, because you'll both just be more worried about keep making the other person happy to worry about actually arguing about stuff. It all kind of works out. And another thing that I think is worth talking about is most scenarios you can come to a conclusion that works best for both of you. It's not necessarily a compromise. Sometimes it might be a compromise where, both of you win a little bit, but neither of you fully wins. But if there's ever a disagreement about things, more likely than not, there's probably an option that both of you like that you haven't considered yet. Sometimes it just takes some deeper thinking. Sometimes it's just a matter of really talking with each other and working out a problem together instead of just assuming your solution you've already come up with is the best and only solution. And sometimes maybe that is the best and only solution, and the other person actually does need to be like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. And that's all part of communication. That's all just talking. And you got to be willing to give up your idea for the sake of the other person's idea if it's genuinely the best option. Yeah. Anything you gotta say there, Josh?
Calling me Josh. Really?
I don't always know that my way of doing things, my way of thinking is going to automatically be helpful for anyone else, but I sincerely hope that this will actually help you in your marriage, help you be able to communicate with each other a little bit better with a little bit less anxiety. Because if you're really already at a point where you're paranoid about just setting the other person off because you said the wrong thing in a particular moment or just want to communicate about really basic things, then there really needs to be a sit down between you two, and you really need to change your frame of mind. And they need to change their frame of mind, because it should never be that way in the first place. There's bigger problems there. Remember to love each other and always try and keep Christ in mind with everything that you're doing. Keep his teachings, follow his commands. And if you look at what the standards are, because there's more than just Ephesians 5, like the overall standards and recommendations for everything about marriage in the Bible, if you just studied all of those very quickly, you studied what love is, you studied how Jesus was with people, you'll pretty much know everything you need to know about how you need to treat each other, and you'll find everything just kind of works smoothly. Communication is a major part of things, and when you do it lovingly, when you really love the other person, you care about the other person, and you really want what's best for the other person, it all falls into place. And that's really what Ephesians 5 is getting at, because Jesus put all of us first. He didn't have to do what he did. He did not have to take on human flesh and die and rise again from the dead. He didn't have to do any of that. And honestly, when you really think about it, every day was probably difficult for him. He's surrounded by sinners as a perfect man. When I think about how great he was when he was here, I keep on saying was, like, he's up there, he's around. But, when he was doing what he was doing in the gospel, he already gave us an example of exactly how we need to be in general to everyone, but even more so to our spouses. Keep Jesus in mind, everything else will work out. And now, with all that being said, something you can do just to get yourself started here, get yourself in the right mindset, is tonight, maybe even right now, just go and pray for your spouse, pray about your ability to communicate with each other, pray for the other person, and really just get yourself focused on God and your spouse, and then go and actually talk to them about things. Really try your best to take this stuff to heart, and just go into that conversation thinking, how can I love you and prioritize you instead of only caring about whatever I want in this particular situation, as is so often the case for many people. It's really important to always keep the other person in mind, as I already said, and it might be hard at first, it might not. It might be what you're already doing, and well, it doesn't always go perfectly even when you're doing your best, but these are Just some practical things you can always keep in mind going into conversations about literally anything. Minor disputes, big disputes, just something you got to figure out together. No matter what, when you have these mindsets there, things will kind of fall into place the majority of the time. And sometimes you just have to talk a little bit more than normal. But with that being said, you go ahead and go pray, and we'll see you in the next video.